guys. It's Dylan here with the Music Factory podcast, and I have the pleasure of talking with the amazing bassist, educator, Grammy winner, author, Victor Wooten. How you doing, Vic?
It's a good day, my friend. It's a good day
It's
to
good.
talk with you. I appreciate
Hey,
you having me with you.
my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us, though.
Yeah, man, you're welcome.
Yeah. So since this is a music school podcast and kind of a lot of it's for our students. I
Hmm.
want to start I know music's been part of your life, your entire life. You were basically born into it, right? But
Yeah, very
yeah,
true.
you could tell us a little about how you all got started, maybe some of your earliest memories,
Sure.
important teachers.
Absolutely. Well, I was, like you said, literally born into it. When I was born, I was the youngest of five brothers. And before I was born, my brothers already knew that I was going to be the bass player. They were already playing Reggie on guitar, Rudy on sax. Actually, in order of the age, I'll go Reggie playing guitar, Roy drums, Rudy saxophone, Joseph keys. When I was born, they needed a bass player,
Yeah.
and so I don't remember not playing. I don't remember not being in a band. Very, very fortunate, very lucky. Just born to the right people at the right time. And Dylan, you've heard me talk about this a lot, but this is why I relate music to a language
Hmm.
is because I was literally learning to speak English and learning to speak music at the same time.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I was learning them both in the same way.
Hmm.
Not by telling, no one told it with either. No one ever told me to sit in a room and practice these things over and over. Sit by yourself and practice these over and over. In both cases, music and language, I learned by jamming with people,
Yeah.
right? I had people to play with, and these people never treated me like a beginner ever, right?
Interesting.
In language or music.
Just
And we
thrown
never
right
do in
into it.
language. What's that?
You're
Sorry.
just thrown right into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't know any better. A baby doesn't know they don't know English yet. They think they're communicating just like everybody else. And they are. It's just that the words are wrong.
They just don't have them yet.
Yeah, everything else is right. The emotion, the meaning,
Hmm.
the inflections, right? If they get more serious, they get louder. If it's a question, the pitch gets higher. All that stuff is there. So
Yeah.
for me, music, we're all born musical, whether we know it or not. And then we kind of hone it in and learn to do it the right way. But anyway, so I learned from my brothers. I was in a band my whole life. By the time I was five, we were literally out gigging and touring, and I've just never stopped. And I was, you know, quite older when I found out that I could continue doing this as a career.
Really?
Yeah, it was when my three older brothers, with our parents' blessing, they dropped out of college
Oh,
because a few really good teachers that they had got let go by the college, so the teachers weren't there, and so all of a sudden my brothers they found themselves teaching, writing all the music for the marching band in college, doing all this stuff, and they realized, wow, why are we paying for this? And
was they in music college or was it uh, something else?
it wasn't particularly a music college, but they were there for music.
Mm.
Reggie, my older brother Reggie, went to, at the time it was called Hampton Institute. Now it's Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. I think he went there 1 year, and then he transferred to Norfolk State in Norfolk, Virginia. And the next year, um, my other two brothers went at the same time, so three of them were there. And I can't remember if they went to Norfolk, if Reggie went to Norfolk 2 years, so Hampton 1 and Norfolk 2 years, or if he went to Hampton 1 and Norfolk 1. But either way, the last year or two, Reggie was there, but Roy and Rudy were with him. But the cool thing, Dylan, is that there's a great film director, writer named Spike Lee that a lot
Hmm.
of people know. Well, Spike Lee's dad, his name is Bill Lee, and he's kind of a legendary jazz bassist.
Okay.
He's not as popular as Mingus or Ron Carter, but he's in that league. He grew
Oh,
up with at the same time, and he's heavy duty. Well, that's Spike Lee's dad. So Spike Lee's aunt, her name is Consuela Lee, and she was married Consuela Lee Moorhead. Consuela has since passed away, but she was teaching at these colleges. And so when she moved to Norfolk State, Reggie transferred to Norfolk State to continue with her. And she brought in this jazz guitarist who lives up near Seattle now, but a guy named John Shacklet. And he's a heavy duty jazz guitarist. Again, he's one of these guys that grew up with Wes Montgomery and all these other people. He knew Wes,
wow.
but he's not the most popular. He's not popular at all. People don't know about him, but he knows all this stuff. So this is who Reggie and Roy and Rudy are learning from.
Oh, wow.
Even my brother Joseph, as a kid, is taking piano lessons from Consuela Lee, who's like this, McCoy Tyner, Herbie Hancock, knows all this theory stuff, and so Joseph's learning from her. But then both of them, Consuela and John Shackley, get fired.
Oh,
So now these main teachers that are really keeping Reggie and Roy and Rudy at college are gone, and so they're there. They're still marching in the marching band, but now they're literally writing the music for all the instruments. Reggie and Roy, teaching classes, and they're just not enjoying themselves.
wow. So they're
And
paying to be at this school, but they're doing the work.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
and we've been playing our whole lives.
Yeah.
So with the uh, agreement of our parents, they dropped out,
Right.
and we just started playing. And so Reggie's 8 years older than me. So if he's in his second or third year of college, where am I? I don't remember. Like, eighth grade or something like that.
Hmm.
8 years earlier, 8 years later than him. That was when it dawned on me that wow, I can just keep doing this. I'm ninth grade or eighth or something, and I can just play music. This is it. You know, Whatever you grow up doing all the time, like working in the garden or working on a farm with your parents or whatever. At that age, you don't really expect that that's going to be your career.
Yeah.
And
Just
I
kind of.
thought I was, I thought I was going to be a fireman or a policeman because in the early '70s, that's what little boys thought.
Yeah.
But when I found out I could do music, it was a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Mm.
For one, it was easy. I had been doing my career my whole life, but I didn't try as hard academically in school,
Mm.
meaning I didn't push myself. Now, our parents would not let us get bad grades. We had to get A's and B's. A C was pushing it. So I got great grades. I graduated with honors, was celebrated as one of the top black, uh, students with good grades, either in the region or the state. I can't remember, but I got a nice award. But I didn't really push myself. I did what was kind of easy.
Hmm.
And I wish now that I had pushed myself a little harder.
Yeah.
Even though I did well, I just know that academically I didn't do as well as I could have.
Yeah. Because you had other things you were working on, and it just wasn't.
Yeah.
It didn't
I mean,
feel
I was just,
important.
I can't even say I was working on it, man. Music was too easy.
Oh, you just.
You didn't work on English. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You did, but you didn't.
Hmm.
And music was the same way. I was just doing it, literally dealing my whole life.
Yeah.
My earliest memory of playing for people was when I was about 2 years old, maybe three.
That's amazing.
You know,
Wow. Did you have a full size bass?
no, no. My
No.
first instrument wasn't even a bass.
What was it?
My first real instrument, meaning the ones I gigged with, was a guitar. Reggie took two
Oh.
high strings off of his guitar,
Wow.
and because I could hold that and
Yeah.
play. But even before that, it was a toy Mickey Mouse guitar. That's the earliest memories. A little
Love that.
plastic guitar, and you couldn't really play it. You couldn't
Yeah.
play it as far as notes, but you can make sounds on it.
Hmm.
And so, pretty much as soon as I could sit up, they I would be playing music, holding something.
And Reggie was about 8 at that point, you said?
When I was born, Reggie was 8.
Okay, so eight,
Or
nine.
when I was born, actually Reggie was 7. He was almost 8. Yeah. So my
Right, right.
birthday's in September. Reggie's in October,
I
right?
always,
So when I'm born, Reggie's 7. He turns 8 a few months later.
I always
But
thought that was
the
amazing.
cool thing they did, Dylan, is that as they're teaching me music, they're doing it the same way they teach you English by just letting you listen and participate.
Hmm.
So my brothers would play music around me, and every little kid looks up to their older siblings. Doesn't matter if it's male, female, you look up to them. Doesn't even matter if we admit it or not. Look up to them. And so when I was old enough, they would put a toy in my hand and then play around me.
Hmm.
And I would sit there and just strum rhythms. And so for me, it was sort of like baby talk, you know. But I learned rhythm. I learned what it meant if the hi hat opens up at the end of 4 bars. You know, all these little inflections in music, the same way they are in language. I was learning those, and I learned those first before I could actually play your right notes.
And even learning those, not necessarily as concepts, huh? Just as like a feeling,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like when you're a kid and your mother or your dad ask a question and the pitch goes up.
Hmm.
The same words as a statement, the pitch either stays straight or goes down. It's not a concept as
Yeah,
a kid.
nobody, you're not thinking, oh, the pitch went up. I have to answer something,
Right.
right? You just know.
You just know.
Hmm.
That's the best way to learn.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Yeah, I've definitely, in my teaching career, I've definitely drawn a lot of from what I've learned from you. The music lesson book was a huge influence for me, and then that led me to your camps. And
Thank you.
now, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I've always been a little interested in. You guys were opening for Curtis Mayfield early on. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I think Reggie said I turned 6 during that tour. Yeah. We were living in Sacramento, California at the time. We started playing music when I was in Hawaii. My dad was stationed there. And then I didn't even go to school in Hawaii. That's how young I was. So I started school in California, and that's where we started doing real gigs for money.
Hmm.
And and when I was young, yeah, got to do a tour opening for Curtis Mayfield. It's really nice.
Do you remember? Or do you remember much of that?
Very little,
Very little. Yeah.
very little. Yeah, there's one incident that I kind of remember on the tour, but for the most part, I don't remember much of it at all.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, other than your brothers, obviously your brothers were a huge influence in your playing and learning and growing. Do you have other teachers who that really stuck out for you?
Um, yes, but they weren't teachers in the sense where I sat down and took lessons.
Hmm.
But in the 6th grade, I took orchestra. In Virginia, they started music programs. They allowed kids to start music programs in the 6th grade. I had been playing bass my whole life. Growing up in nightclubs, I saw these big double basses, and I only saw the big one, so I thought I'd always be too small to play one. So in the orchestra, I chose cello,
Mm.
and that was a blessing in disguise because the cello parts are always much more interesting than the bass parts, especially at that age.
Yeah.
And I really learned to bow, and I really learned to read music.
Oh, that's awesome.
So those teachers, I had 3 main orchestra teachers throughout my, uh, elementary, from 6th grade through 12th grade, basically, and they're invaluable to me. I don't know if they realize what they did for me, but I learned how to read really well, and reading cello is bass clef, so it's the same note, same register as
Hmm.
electric bass. Taught me how to read electric bass, which allowed me to do things early on, like play in a high school jazz band in 8th grade, stuff like that. Because I could already play, but now I could read it too.
Hmm.
So my orchestra teachers helped with that. But even more than that were the neighborhood kids and the surrounding musicians that we jammed with all the time.
Yeah.
And again, you're probably sick of it, but I relate music to language all the time. If I were to ask you who were your English teachers, you might think of English in school, but they didn't teach you to talk,
Yeah.
right? The people who taught you to talk were the kids in the neighborhood,
Hmm.
your parents. And so, man, there were some of the world's best musicians. Some of them you know about, some of them you'll never know about. But like most of the Dave Matthews Band, by the time we moved to Virginia, now from California to Virginia, now I'm in the third grade, and we're playing, and then we meeting all these musicians. There was a amazing jazz fusion band called Secrets, and basically it was a Dave Matthews Band without Dave. Carter Beauford on drums, Tim Reynolds, who plays guitar with Dave a lot, is the guitar player. There's a sax player who's made a big name for himself in New York, named Steve Wilson. Steve was a sax player, just great musicians. And back then, Dylan, that's how we learned. If you had a keyboard player lived up the street, you were at his or her house all the time jamming.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just so happened that it was our house because there were five of us and we had a room full of instruments. That's where everybody came.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
was lucky. I was lucky.
Yeah, I feel that. I can definitely relate to that. I picked up bass in middle school, and I took some lessons and ended up doing a little bit of jazz band in middle school, high school, but really I spent every afternoon in my parents' garage with a group
Hmm.
of friends just playing and challenging each other, and that was a huge period of growth. It just, oh, how'd you do that? Oh, very cool, very cool. Let me try that, and just pushing each other. So that was
That's it. That's
exactly,
it.
exactly.
Yeah. And for students, for young students these days, or young and old, I wish they would do that more.
Hmm.
It seems to me that people practice by themselves more these days. And it seems that only the select few have the drive and the desire to figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the majority nowadays practice by themselves and kind of wait to be taught. If I want to learn this song, I look for it on YouTube, someone teaching me how to play it. Or I send a Facebook message to this person asking, for lessons, or can you send me a video of how you did this? Can you, which is cool because everybody's available. It's good to ask questions, but what you learn on your own, you probably never forget
Mm.
because it takes sweat, takes some work, and you're proud once you learned it.
Yeah.
Which is why at camp I don't like it when people shout out answers.
Right.
You know, I want people to know the answer but keep quiet unless the teacher asks. But that way everybody gets a chance to discover the answer on their own
Mhm.
rather than just hearing this person say it. Because it means more what you discover on your own means a whole lot more, I believe, in the long run than what someone just tells you.
And a lot of times I find in those situations, people might come up with different answers from each other and they're both right,
Right.
you know?
Absolutely.
And if
And
you
yeah,
shout it out, right, then it
yeah,
negates what someone else was thinking
you're
or
absolutely
could.
right. And sometimes the opposite is true too, where a person's thinking correctly, afraid to say it, but then someone shouts out an answer and it can make you go down a different road. And that
Mm.
different road could be incorrect,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
And then in
Yeah.
a lot of cases too, people are shouting out answers just to let you know I know the answer.
Yeah.
And if you know, you know. No one needs to know you know. Um, and that's withholding that right answer, even though you know it, is a practice in character
Mm.
and being what's the word, being confident and solid in your own self without having to prove it.
Without needing the external validation of someone
Absolutely.
saying, good job, you got it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a tough one.
That is a tough one. That is
Yeah.
definitely a tough one. That's something that's still something I work on a lot,
We all
for
do.
sure.
We all do, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, especially when you get in a position like me where and I'm not real famous. You know, I don't have Michael Jackson, Beyonce, Prince. I'm lucky. I can walk out the street. I can go in the grocery store.
Mm,
You know, and if anything, people might want to tell me that they like my music, or maybe get a photo at the most. Other than that, they leave me alone, which is wonderful.
yeah.
But when you get in a place where everybody just tells you how good you sound, you play a concert, Dylan, it could be your worst night in 3 years, but people afterwards, as my brother Roy says, people are going to give you the Elvis treatment. It's going to treat
Mm,
you like you were great. Anyway, it's easy to start believing that,
mm,
right? Because even unconsciously, you realize, wow, I don't have to practice. I don't have to work on this. I don't have to warm up, and I still get the same compliments.
mm,
So you have to know how to self monitor yourself, self evaluate yourself for the good and the bad. And most of us, I should say a lot of us, I don't know if it's most of us, we only do that on the negative side. We beat ourselves up. We rarely praise ourselves,
mm,
right? We rarely do that. We rarely celebrate the good part of ourselves, even though we really criticize and beat down the negative parts of ourselves. But we don't do the opposite.
yeah.
And that's a sad thing to me, you know. But at a place where I'm at musically and publicly, people do it for me all the time. You just hear how great you are and all this kind of stuff, and it's easy to fall prey to that,
Yeah.
right? But we need to keep growing, keep analyzing, right? Keep dusting off the cobwebs. You know, keep reevaluating, but also keep celebrating. Don't just beat yourself down. You know, you still love yourself. You know that you're good enough, whether you learn anything else or not. You're good enough for life, you know. But just the fact that we are here, you know, we have something to offer. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And just being really honest with yourself on both sides of that.
absolutely. That honesty is the key.
Hmm.
Because when we're beating up ourselves, we're being just as dishonest as we think we're being when we praise ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, oh man, you suck. That was horrible. That it wasn't.
Hmm.
Could it be better? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. But it was good. People enjoyed it. People giving you compliments and you're telling them they're wrong. You know, don't do that. You know,
And music's great because you play a wrong note, it doesn't hurt anybody.
nah. And in many cases, the only person that noticed it was you
Yeah.
or, you know, me. And then we think the whole world is looking at us funny now because of them. Yeah.
Hmm.
And music is so safe. You know, you can be so wrong and nobody gets hurt. And, you know,
The
we deserve.
opposite the opposite side happens too though, like you have uh I know I've been on stage and felt like I had a rough night,
Mm-hmm.
and then get off stage and somebody genuinely comes up and says that was awesome and I loved it. And
Yeah.
so I don't want to, I can still know, okay, I can do better, but I also don't want to negate their experience
Right.
of appreciation and enjoyment
Right.
of it, right?
And that's a hard lesson to learn too.
Hmm.
Is to not tell that person they're wrong when they're telling you that you're good or bad because they're telling you their experience.
Yes.
And, you know, I've learned, and I had to learn it, that my answer is thank you,
Hmm.
regardless of whether if it's the criticism or the compliment. All right. I put them in the same box. It's what you think. If you're in charge of my career, right, I don't have a career without you.
Mm.
I need to listen to all of it.
Yeah.
I'm a musician without you. I don't have a career as a musician without you.
Mm.
So I definitely want to know what you think, good or bad. And when you share it, thank you. Because I'm going to listen to all of it.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, I weigh that against who I know that I am also.
Mm.
Because if who I am is not the person that's supporting or that generates the career I want, then I have to look at who I am and say, wow, do I want to change to have a different career? For example, I know how to sell more records. I know how to be more popular. right? I know how that shock value, like, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, as much as I love them, they know how to shock the crowd. They can play naked, dye your hair red, no shirt, tattoos, all that stuff that gets attention sells more records. I understand that. I know the formula of a pop song.
Hmm.
I know the formula of a smooth jazz song. I know what would make songs sell more, records sell more. But as long as mine are selling enough,
Yeah.
I can stay true to who I am and do the music that I love, the music that my heart, you feel it inside the music, so that the audience that I develop, the fan base that I develop, even though it may be smaller than it could be, they love me for who I really am, not who I'm acting like just to sell records. And so for me, it's perfect. It's just enough. I put my kids through college. I live comfortably. But could I sell more? Of course. I know the formula. I know how to do it.
Hmm.
You know. But I get to 100% be me, and I love that, because at that point, that's easy. I don't have to try to uphold this standard that I'm not. I can just be me.
A few years ago at Spirit Camp, uh, I actually had a pretty tough year that time, but on one of the last nights we were talking, and you said, if you do it with 1,000% honesty, you will get an audience that loves you,
Hmm.
even if it's small. And I wrote that down and I read that often and think about that often because that was,
It's true. Yeah. Very, very true. And in the end, whenever our end comes, we're happy with what we did.
mm-hmm, yeah.
Honesty is powerful.
Mm.
And honesty doesn't just mean that you say the truth, it's that you live your truth. You be who you are, and you do your best, and you continue to get better, and you continue to help others get better. To me, that's honesty, right? If I want to do good, but I want you to do bad,
Mm.
you know, and maybe that is honesty too. Maybe I'm being truthful about that, but I should be honest that that needs to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've definitely found that what you just said is true. If you are honest about what you're doing, and it almost doesn't matter what it is, you could just have a love for butterfly wings. I just love the different shapes of butterfly wings. Right? But now with the internet, you can reach it across the world and find someone else who loves butterfly wings too. And because you know so much about it, you've got a fan. You know. So yeah, honesty is a powerful thing on this planet if used properly.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Thank you. I agree.
Well, I know that you have a new book coming out at the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, it just the release date just got changed to February, early February of
Okay.
21. Yes.
Would you want to tell us anything about that?
Sure. For anyone who's read the first book, The Music Lesson, if you remember, there's a chapter called "The Dream?" question mark, where there's a conversation with music, and music says that she is sick, that we don't listen to her and feel her like we used to, and that she's dying. So the second book, which is called The Spirit of Music, it starts where the first one leaves off.
Mhm.
And the premise of this book is music is dying and music is disappearing. Now, it's a fictional book, like the first one, but based off of real stories and real lessons. So the lessons are real, even though the story might not be. Um, but music is dying. And I use this analogy in the first chapter, and I'll go ahead and share this part of it with you. And this is what the first chapter of the book, before the story actually starts. Let's say let's use an analogy. Let's say that music, listening to live music, if I go hear your band play, and that's 12 inches of music. If I buy your vinyl, maybe that's 8 inches of music.
Mm-hmm.
If I buy your CD, now we're talking about waveforms, digital waveforms. We're down to, I'm trying to remember, we're down to about 4 inches of music. If I download your music from the internet, the MP3, an MP3 is usually about a tenth the size. It can be up to a tenth the size of a waveform. So now we're down to about a quarter inch or a half an inch of music. We put that through tiny earbuds. Now, I'm trying to think, a tenth the size of 4 inches. No, we're down to about a quarter of an inch. Put that through tiny earbuds and things like that. This is what our youth is growing up thinking is normal,
Mm-hmm.
right? A quarter inch of music. And then you think about this, that music that most of the time we're listening to has been pitch corrected. So we're not getting all the pitches. It's been compressed. It's already sonically, compressed from live down to a quarter inch of MP3. But then we use compression even more so that we mix the loud things soft, the soft things loud. So we're not even getting all the dynamics, right? It's been quantized, meaning all the broken rhythms have been fixed. So we're not getting all the rhythms. So if you think about a person who has cancer in their body, the whole body doesn't have to have cancer for the whole body to die.
Mm-hmm.
Only one part of the body, the lungs, the pancreas, only one part has to have enough cancer for the whole body to die. So how much of music has to get cancer before the whole body of music dies? And that's the question the story is asking. It's the first question. Second question is, what are we going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the premise of the book. And the story takes you, of course, in other places. It's, dropping different types of information about music and life, of course. But the premise of the story is, are we going to save music or are we going to let her die?
Mm-hmm.
So where the first book was kind of fun and, oh, nice, I want to go play. This one is designed to poke at you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Make you think, make you argue, make you look at this thing in a different way. Not, I mean, a fun story, but not as light as the first one.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it. The first one, the music lesson, was life changing and
Thank
something I've revisited many times. And the audio book is beautiful too. So
you. That's my favorite thing. I can't wait to start the audiobook for this one.
yeah.
And the book is getting copy edited, meaning it's all written, but basically the I worked with an editor just to get the book into a better readable place. Then it goes to a copy editor, and I had no idea until recently what a copy editor does. And the copy editor is like mastering a record. It's that
Mm,
final ear that says, "Oh no, we got to change this one little frequency." This, you know, um, and this woman is amazing. She's just finding little things, and she made some suggestions. And the cool thing with this company that I'm using, they're not just changing things without my control.
mm,
They'll make suggestions, send it to me, and I keep some of the suggestions, and I don't keep others. But once I went through the first editor, we're reading it back and forth and making changes, and then we go as far as we can go. Now it's at the copy editor, and I finally got a copy of the book in literal book form. It's all digital, but I can see what every page is going to look like. The little emblems and designs. I see everything, but I've got to read it again, and so I'm on chapter, I think, 8 out of 20. and I'm still finding small changes that I want to make,
Sure.
you know. Oh man, I forgot to say this, small little things. And so I'm going to get to the end and I'm making my little highlights and I'll send it back to the copy editor and they'll make their changes, send it back to me. I get to read it one more time and hopefully it's final. But I'm saying all that to say once it's final, I'm starting the audiobook.
Wow. Well,
Yeah. It's
that's
exciting.
awesome.
I already got my characters lined up and all
Cool.
of that. Yeah. So
Cool.
it'll be fun.
What what made you decide I'm gonna write a novel? I'm a bass player, musician, and now I'm going over here. I'm gonna write a novel.
Yeah, I stayed away from it for years, Dylan. But you've heard me in class talk about 2 through 10
Hmm.
or 1 through 10.
Yeah.
So this was a class I've been teaching since the 90s when and at camp starting in 2000. But when the Flecktones became popular and it allowed me to become popular to bass players, I started being asked to teach, do workshops and clinics, visit schools. I didn't know how to teach anything, never taught anything. So I started looking at what people were teaching about music. What are bass players talking about? What are other people talking about? And I found for the most part, people were talking about technique and notes.
Mm.
And that was music theory. Basically, music theory only dealt with notes, but bass players would add in techniques, tapping, slapping, and I said, well, this is all good stuff, but everybody's already talking about it. Well, how come nobody's talking about like like space and dynamics? I can't find anyone talking about that.
All the
Or,
stuff you were learning with the toy bass.
absolutely, the stuff that makes you sound different than me.
Hmm.
We can use the same techniques, but they're not going to sound the same.
Yeah.
Right? We talk about this at camp. All those instruments you have in the back, you bought those notes, right? They all have the same notes I got. You can buy notes,
Yeah.
but how you use them
Hmm.
and why does Marcus Miller sound different than Jocko? And why does Jocko sound different than Stanley? And so what we think we like about a person is their technique and their notes that they use, but it's really not. It's something else that makes their voice what it is. There's only 12 notes, like we say at camp, Marcus or Stanley or Jocko, they aren't so good that they get a 13th note, right? No, same notes. So it's something else that makes them sound like them. There's something else that gives them their voice. And it's that something else that most people never talk about. So Dylan, I just said that's all I'm going to talk about. People can teach notes better than me. So I'm not even going to try to do that. I'm going to let people do notes, and I'm going to look at the other stuff. So I said, well, what is the other stuff? And I came up with my 10 favorite. And then I realized, well, I should include notes because people think that I'm putting notes down when I didn't talk about them. So
Hmm.
I kept notes in my 1 through 10. But we also talked about feel, emotion, dynamics, phrasing, articulation, tone, all kinds of different things, right? And of course, space and listening. And so I was showing this, and then I came up with techniques, analogies, different ways of practicing these things. And people were saying, man, I've never heard any of this stuff before. You should write a book.
Yeah.
But I felt, and I think I'm right, what they wanted was an instruction book, a how to, a Wooten method, which is exactly what I didn't want. I didn't want to lay claim to any of it. I didn't want to have to defend it, protect it,
Hmm.
or agree with it. If you like it, you take it. Just learn it. And so I stayed away from writing a book for years, but I kept hearing it over and over. You should write a book. And in a lot of cases, people want a book so that they don't have to figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
The book will tell me what to do. How do I practice? Get a book. You know, and I learned that you learn to talk by following someone's example and talking and jamming, right? And so I was really into doing that. I want people just go play. You'll figure this stuff out. But it dawned on me one day to write a story. Basically, you know, Steve Bailey, I was flying into to Myrtle Beach to work on a Basic Streams project, and Steve had a book in the front seat of his car called Illusions,
I'm
a
reading
great
that right
story.
now.
Are you really Richard
Yeah,
Bach?
yeah, I'm reading that right now.
Absolutely, man. And so I get in, that's one of my all-time favorite books.
It's really great. Yeah.
I I get in Steve's car and I got to pick up the book to sit down, and I'm sitting there and silently in my mind I'm saying, man, I probably read this book when I was 14 or 15. And I said, and in my head I said to myself, I bet I could write this book now. And
Huh.
a light bulb went off. That's what to do. Write a story. Write a false fictional story, but put the truth in it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you don't have to defend it,
Yeah.
right? You don't like George Lucas or whatever doesn't have to prove whether Yoda was real or not, or none of that. If just enjoy the story or not. But if those of us that are smart enough to get the lessons in there,
Mhm.
right? May the force be with you. You can
Mm.
substitute any word you want for the word force,
Yeah.
and you realize the power in it. You know,
Mm.
the truth is there. So I decided to write a story, and Illusions is one of the books that led me there, and I patterned. If you know Donald Shimoda and Richard in the book, the teacher and the student,
Mm-hmm.
I use music. They're using biplanes. They're flying biplanes in Illinois.
Yeah.
Right. I also use Tom Brown Jr.
Yeah.
Right, the tracker, teacher and a student, grandfather and Tom in the woods of New Jersey. So if you remember in the music lesson early on, when the narrator meets Michael, and Michael says, "No, I'm not a teacher." He says, "I tried that." Says once as an Apache medicine man in New Jersey,
Yeah.
and once flying biplanes in Illinois.
Oh, okay.
And he also says something about being a yogi in India, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he says this time I'm not teaching, I'm just showing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That was my tip of the hat to Richard Bach, Tom Brown, and some other stuff that I'd read. Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful. I love that. Wow.
Thanks.
You got
Yeah.
any
Well,
other books that jump out as important in your life?
yeah, there were quite a few. There were quite a few. Of course, when we were young, we always had Bibles around the house. Parents were primitive Baptists, so the Bibles were on every shelf. And our parents never made us read it. They didn't say you got to read it, today or twice a day or whatever. None of that. They didn't force us to go to church. But my parents were very religious, and I would say even more spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't force us to be. They just lived it, so we followed suit. And so I learned to enjoy religion as lessons, not truth or false. Because so I could where a lot of people, let me say, will fight so much over whether Bible stories are true or not and miss the lesson that the story is teaching.
Yeah.
And for us, it was just about the lesson, right? Be a good person, tell the truth, don't hurt your neighbor, all this stuff, you know. So, in learning from those stories, there were some of the best books I'd ever read. I mean, like the greatest, and this is going to offend somebody when I say it, but this stuff reads like the greatest fiction books ever.
Mm-hmm.
The waters part and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't read like, I was walking down the street and I saw this. It reads like a Steven Spielberg movie or whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So if we can relax enough and just take it like that, quit arguing over whether it's right or wrong or true or false, just learn from the lessons. That's
Mm-hmm.
some powerful stuff, you
Yeah.
know? And so that's what I do. That's what I did. And I always go back to those books, but I don't care whether it really happened or not. And I know a lot of people think I'm maybe blasphemous or whatever, but that's not important to me. Even if it did happen, I wasn't there.
Hmm.
So for me, it's at least the me that exists right now. It's just a story to me. Even if you were there, whatever you did today, you tell me about it. To me, it's just a story.
Yeah.
But if you tell me it's true, then I say it's true. I believe it's true. But then you say, oh, no, I made it up. Then I change my mind and I say, okay, it wasn't true. And in either case, it comes down to it's up to me whether it's true or not.
Yeah. And what you get
Right?
out of it.
And what that's it. That's it. So those are great ones. Another one was a book by a guy named Neil Donald Walsh.
Mm.
And it's called Conversations with God. And I like those books because of the information, but because of the technique he used. And I found out it can work for any of us. This is a guy named Neil Donald Walsh. And Neil has penned one of my favorite quotes that I use at camp a lot, which is life begins at the end of your comfort zone.
Mm.
I mean, you got to dare to be uncomfortable. Then life begins. Like I always say, nobody talks about the time we rode through the Arizona desert and we had enough gas. Our air conditioner worked. No flat tires. We got there where we were going on time. Nobody talks about that, right? It's the time when everything possible went wrong,
Mm.
right? But in the end, we're still here to talk about
Yeah.
it, right? And we're better because of it. We're fueled. Yeah, you have to dare to be uncomfortable. But Neil Donald Walsh had gotten so uncomfortable in his life. He had been homeless. He had been married a bunch of times. Nothing was going right. I think he had even broken his back or neck or something, maybe. And he got up one night and just took out like a yellow legal pad and just started writing. Started writing. He didn't know who he said. I didn't even know who I was writing to. But it was like, why is my life so horrible? Why is everything I love bad for me? Like chocolate even, He said, why do I marry women rather than just dating them? You know, and he just went and went. He said he wrote for hours. And he said when he stopped, he felt inspired to write something else. He didn't even know what it was, but he felt inspired. So he picked up his pencil and he put it to the page and he wrote, are you just venting or do you really want answers? And he's like, where did that come from? So he answered it. He said, both. I am venting, but if there are answers, I sure as hell would like to know them. And he put his pencil down. He felt inspired again to write something else. So he picked his pencil up and he wrote, you are sure as hell about a lot of things, but wouldn't it be nicer to be as sure as heaven? And he read what he wrote and he went, my goodness, where did that come from?
Mm.
So he kept writing question, answer. And he couldn't believe the questions he was asking and he was answering them. I mean, the questions were his, but the answers were coming from some crazy place, some part of himself. And so he calls the books Conversations with God. And the word God can keep a lot of people away from that book, but there's so much enlightenment in it. And apparently that book was published with no editing at all. It just came out perfect. And so that's been one of my favorites also because it talks about real things that make us uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Sex, race, all kinds of stuff that we have we all have questions about, but kind of feel funny talking about it. But that's one of my favorite books. There's a bunch of them, Dylan, and I get most of these books I learned as kids following my brothers because as they got older and they got into this whole spiritual thing, they started reading books like autobiography of a yogi.
Mm.
Or there's a series book called A Course in Miracles that I learned about as a kid. So, and whenever my brothers got, I got. When they
Yeah.
ordered A Course in Miracles, I ordered all three copies. I didn't know what it was, but they ordered it. I ordered it. If they read Illusions when they finished, like, can I borrow your book? I read it. You know, and so I was lucky to get turned on to some amazing thought processes as a very, very young kid.
Hmm.
And then as I grew up, I was like, well, this is what my mom and dad been talking about all along. you know, I just had to finally discover it on my own.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I teach, Dylan. You know, I call it music, but
Mhm.
it's really just my way of helping someone live their lives as best as they possibly can. And if music brings them to me, I'm going to give them that and more. And music to me is right now, especially, is probably the best way to look at life and still feel safe, right? Because if you think about us playing in a band together, we first, before we even play, we're going to agree. We don't call it an agreement, but we do. We tune together,
Mhm.
right? So we start agreeing, right? I don't just start wherever I am and you're wrong if you don't play in the same frequency as me. You know, we agree first. Then we figure out what we're going to play. And if we don't figure out what we're going to play, we even listen more.
Mhm.
Right? I don't even know what to say until you say something. If you don't say something, I'm going to say something to make you say something. How you doing, Dylan? Right?
I'm good.
Exactly. That's designed to involve you.
Yeah.
I'm not talking at you first.
Mhm.
Listen to me first. It's to engage our dialogue so that we can listen to each other. And when I ask you, how are you? I listen. Right? We do the same thing in music. We do that in music, but it's it's built into it. I have to listen to you to know what to play. If you're playing a different instrument than me, I don't criticize what you're playing because you're different,
Right.
right? The band's better when all the instruments are different.
Right.
Yeah, so in music we celebrate differences. We
Mhm.
agree before we start. We listen to each other. We take turns talking. Oh man, it's powerful if we all lived that way.
And then the whole audience nods in agreement.
In agreement. They came to agree,
Mhm.
right? And their whole audience is nodding in agreement, like you say. And also we forget for a while, for a few hours, what we disagree about.
Yeah.
Right? The whole audience doesn't care color of the skin, who you pray to, how much money you make, how educated you are. We're just agreeing. Something happens on stage and we're high-fiving strangers,
Yeah.
you know? Music's powerful that way. So my method has been to teach life through music
Mm.
because it stays safe, you know. Somebody says, "Hey, well, what should I play?" I say, "Well, what is music asking for?" All right, we're still cool. That's not the spiritual, religious. But if I said, "Listen to God, listen to the universe," all of a sudden, now what? Well, this is
What do you
weird.
mean?
Well, yeah. But if I say, "Well, listen to music," what's music asking for? Same thing. May the force be with you. You know. But music is still a safe way to talk about these things. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I know you have a time limit that we're coming up on here.
Yeah.
So uh, I just want to, I'll let you go. I want to ask one. Do you have any quick? You've given us plenty already, but but do you have any last words of advice for musicians, teachers, students?
Well, for teachers, uh, I would say, especially in the beginning, to focus on the students' strengths, not what their weaknesses are.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, and that means we have to be better. Okay. But you already know how to do it. Whenever you see a baby, you don't get down on them because they're not speaking clear English. It makes you pay attention even more. And especially if you have a child, a mother knows what every sound means. You can look at a person's facial expressions, the baby's body expressions. You can tell, oh, they need to go to the bathroom, they're hungry, they're sleepy, whatever. We learn the student's way first before we force them into learning our way. Okay? We don't do it in music, but we do it in life. So, as teachers, we need to raise our awareness better to quickly assess the student's ability, what their strengths are, and start from there by working off what they can do, not what they can't yet.
Hmm.
Okay. That's going to keep the student motivated. It's going to keep the student happier because they're actually seeing improvement and achievement. We, as teachers, we need to find out why the student came in the first place and then help them get there quickly. But we're smarter. We know what they need more than what they just want.
Mm.
So, like a kid who only wants to eat cake and candy, we have to add vegetables. But we need to add vegetables in a way that makes them crave them, not ever want to eat them again.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, we shove it down their throat in a way that they're not good at. It's no fun, and they never want to do this again. So we want to celebrate their gifts, and everyone can play one note on beat.
Mm-hmm.
So let them play one note, put on a drum machine, play some chords around it, sing, make it a jam session. A 10-year-old student has been listening to music for almost 11 years.
Yeah.
Anybody that does something for 10 years is not a beginner. So don't treat your student as a beginner. They're very musical. If a song comes on the radio, they're going to learn. If they like it, they're going to know that song faster than you or me. They may not know that the chord progression goes 1, 6 minor to 4 to 5, but they'll be singing the lyrics while all we know is the bass part.
Yeah,
Right?
that's for sure.
So kids know a whole lot about music. Our job is to help them express their musicality as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start making it thorough and showing them the vegetables. But let's get them there.
Yeah,
This way they keep doing it. We lose too many of our students.
yeah.
So that's a thought for teachers.
Just get them excited.
Yes. For students, the same thing. You're not a beginner. You know music already. Now we're just learning how to express it through an instrument. The instrument's not musical. You are as a student. Students need to be smarter than their teachers. Okay? Because a student, right, is the one with the ability. Right? We're the one that has that desire, hopefully, and knows what we want to do with it. So what the teacher says, and here's the thing. A lot of the time students come in the room with this as a possibility, this much. And then we leave with this as much as a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the teacher in most cases only knows how to give us this. We have to maintain this. So if we come in with this, we should leave with this.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And that's what I mean why the student needs to be smarter. I should say probably wiser than the teacher, because in most cases the teacher has this agenda, and we need to take this agenda but add it to this stuff we already have.
Mm-hmm.
So smarter is really not the right word, but we have to be wise enough to add what the teachers say to what we already have, right? Um, and to the student, just know that you're capable. You can do it, right? You have something that's worthy. You already have a voice, and the teacher will help us express ourselves with that voice. That voice doesn't have to change. You don't have to find a new voice, right? Bob Dylan didn't have to go find a new voice, right? Willie Nelson is the only Willie Nelson there is. Not that it's the greatest or the worst. It's just that he's the only one, and that's what
Yeah.
adds value to it. If you think of anything that there's only one diamond, only one ruby, there's only one you,
Yeah.
and you're more special than any of that. So your teacher is helping you improve upon that. So listen with open ears and an open heart. Doesn't mean you have to believe everything, but you should listen to everything. And I always say to students, take good notes. That way you can keep listening for the rest of your life.
Mm.
Yeah,
With honesty, 1,000% honesty.
absolutely.
Well, thank you, Victor. This has been amazing. I
I
really,
appreciate it.
I really appreciate you taking the time. So,
Me too. Thank you for your time. I'm happy we can make this happen.
yeah, what a
And
pleasure.
thanks for coming to our camps, man.
Hey, you try and keep me away.
Sound good. I remember that one camp where, I finally listened to you play keyboards. And I was like, wow, this guy's got something. There's every camp, there's so many students, and, it's hard to just like really zone in and pay attention to, one person where,
Sure.
I'm hearing them all. Um, but man, I finally got to hear you play some stuff, and I was like, Wow. I hadn't even realized all that was there. It's like, wow, okay, good. Very nice.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've been playing bass a long time, but I've been falling in love with the piano for sure.
Yeah. And that's another thing I urge all students is to learn to play piano.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be your main instrument, but learn it.
Hmm.
Yeah, the best musicians I know on any instrument all play piano.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Hey, thank you.
I
Yeah,
hope we can do this again.
yeah, I hope so too. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, my friend.
You have a good one.
You too. Take care.